So first, let's start with the obvious. You can't polish a turd. So what I mean by that is that when you're using professional samples, you're actually using samples that have gone through layers of processing and effects. So what it means is that the sound sounds as fat as possible, as fat as it can be. So you can obviously learn that by yourself, but if you're a beginner and you're just like a few months in the game, it's going to take you a lot of time to learn all these things, and it's going to slow down your workflow. It's better to do that later on. So for example, you've got very good drums from Cymatics. I really like Cymatics because they have like tons of free stuff as well. So just go on cymatics.fm and download all the free stuff you can. It's all genres, all styles. And then you have also the Vengeance samples, which I really like as well. The good thing is that they fit very well for that big room and house sound because all the samples are super crunchy and over compressed. If you're making something that's more organic, maybe you should stay away from them. But you know, Vengeance samples, they've been around for a very, very long time. Only downside is that they're kind of expensive. The other sample pack website that I like to go on is Splice. So it's a monthly retainer thing. So the good thing is that on Splice you'll have some famous sample packs like the Kashmir pack, and you have some less famous, smaller independent creators which still make very good quality samples. So you can support both worlds with your monthly credits. We make music on computers, but we don't make music for computers and machines. We make music for human beings. What makes a great drummer is that there's always imperfection. He never plays perfectly in rhythm, and it's the exact same thing for pianists. They create imperfections to add feelings, groove, and emotions. So as computer musicians, we have different methods to create that emotion, that groove. And one of them is not always sticking straightly to the grid. So as you can see here, the grid is this line, which I'm activating here, and it's too easy to just take your sample and block it like that. But for example, here I have a clap sample, which is slightly set before. So usually when it's set before, it adds to the rhythm. And for example, when you set it slightly after, it creates a more loose feel and more organic. You can layer your drums without making things complicated. So for example, here I'm using a snare and a clap both at the same time, and you will see that it sounds more full and gives more power. So here the clap was set slightly before, and so it gave a bit of punch, a bit of attack to a snare that was already quite powerful. And again, this is without any processing, any fancy plugins. It's just basic layering. It's okay to use drum loops. One way I use drum loops is actually dropping them in and just taking the one shot that's interesting for my track. Is like that. And what I did was just take the one shot. The good thing is that you can hear it in context with all your other instruments, and then just decide that you want to keep that one. And here it's exactly the same thing. I just kept the end. Another creative way to use drum loops is to cut them and use the MIDI from them. So what you do is like drag and drop the whole loop, right click on the loop, and then use the function convert drums to new MIDI track. You will then end up with something like that. And what you can do is just select the one line that's interesting. So here what's really good is you can see that it's just not a hit that hits in a robotic way. You can see that there's velocity movement, the groove is not perfectly on the grid, and so this is what makes the loop interesting to hear and high quality. And then what you do is simply remove everything and use the one shot that you want. So in this case I used my own hat, but I could have used a perk or a synth sound to make it more interesting and be more creative. Another simple trick is to use delay plugins to create movement and to create delay that will create your whole loop. So for example, this snare is just me plugging in the notes, but then it will sound very different once I use the plugin called Echo in Ableton Live, which is a stock plugin. With Echo on, So as you can see, it's creating movement by duplicating the sound, creating delay, and you can control the sound whether it's coming on the left or the right. And you have a cool picture here which shows how the sound is appearing on the stereo spectrum. And another cool thing is to change the feedback, which will create more or less delay. And you also have the dry wet knob. If you're using other types of sound, you can also go crazy on the modulation and character here, which will create duplicates that are different than the original sound, and which makes things very interesting. And my final tip is the use of the groove pool, which is very good in Ableton Live and will again create groove and movement. Check out the snare sound. So as you can hear, the one in pink is cutting through. It's not fixed and it's more groovy. So what I did is simply create a simple MIDI clip, input my notes, and then go down right here in the groove pool. Just click here and you can choose grooves from several different types of drum machines. And groove actually came from drum machines because those drum machines were actually boring. They just played sounds perfectly on time. And so they're inspired by real drummers. And so for example, one of my favorite come from the MPC here, because the MPC is a very famous drum machine that was used for many decades in hip hop. So here, once you use the MPC 8, you're adding swing to the notes in 1/8, as you can choose here. And when you're choosing MPC 16, you're affecting notes in 1/16. So the cool thing is that you can hear them, and usually the further you go down the list, the crazier they are. For example, one of the craziest is the funker here. Let's listen. So once you have a swing selected, you just need to drag and drop it here and then press play and listen to it. So there's no right or wrong groove. It really depends on your drums, on the style, on your loop, on your bass, on many other things. The best thing to do is to try many of them and see which one you like. Thanks for watching. I hope the tutorial was useful and you learned a few things. There are still many other tips that I can give you, but this was just a start. If you have any questions, you can send me an email. My email is in the description box below, and the project's file is also available for download in the description box. Peace.